we go.
Hi guys.
So this is your It's a Boundary workshop. Oh, perfect. We just had someone else join in last minute, so I'm glad that you made it. Hopefully you can hear us. Elizabeth, if you just popped on, can you hear us okay? She doesn't have a little speaker thing like Anthony does. Maybe she'll acquire it. Let me see. But basically, there we go. This is the It's a Boundary workshop. So we're here today to convey what we've learned and what we know about boundaries, because it's something that we're really passionate about. It's something that has really improved our quality of life. We've lived the example coming from like one end of the spectrum and now coming to where we currently are, which is definitely improved boundaries.
And honestly, like, it's been a really big process for me, and it's something that's like a continual process for me as well. As like I continue to like evolve and like attract like people into my life that are like super safe for me to even like practice my boundaries with, and to just know that it's safe to express them and honor them.
Yes, absolutely. So it's definitely going to be something, you guys, like, that's a work in progress. Like, we don't expect anyone after this workshop to be like an absolute expert and you're able to implement every single thing that we teach you right away. Yeah. There are going to be some things that just take time to practice. It's kind of like exercising a muscle that the more you do it, the stronger it gets and the easier it gets, right? Yeah. So it's just something that you just become more mindful of and you make it a commitment in your life to practice it. But also know too that at any point during our presentation or the exercises or anything, if you guys have questions or if you're unsure of something or if you want some more clarification, feel free just to let us know in the chat box and we'll be sure to elaborate or, you know, clarify anything for you guys.
Yeah, and
that's your bonus for being here live.
Yeah, and this is the more intimate setting live, so you get to have those back and forth conversations with us, and if anything comes up, like, we will address it. What we talk about is going to be a lot of like ideally where you're going to want to be at, but I know that, like, you know, there can be gaps in between like what we talk about and ideally where you want to be with boundaries and where you're at right now, and like that's totally okay. You know, again, to speak up so that way we can talk about it, because this workshop is about you and where you're at ultimately.
Mm-hmm. So the way that we'll do it is if you have any questions about the things that we're talking about, feel free to ask at any point. And then we'll kind of save, I think, more towards the end for more like personal questions, like here's my situation in my life, like how can I improve this, how can I make this better, and then we'll be here to answer those questions.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I'm Matthew Rosewater. For those of you that don't know me, or if you're watching the replay of this later on, I've kind of come into like my awakening with spirituality within like the last 4 or 5 years, but more so the last like 2 years I've been like really hyper focused on like self-development and just really finding different ways to make my life more enjoyable and easier. So one of the things that I've come into now is understanding what boundaries even are. And I think that we're such a good duo to learn from because we come with a history as well. Beatrice and I, like when we first became friends, which I don't even know, is it like 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
I can't even keep track. Basically, shortly after becoming friends, we became roommates together. And we were under the same roof with another roommate that was just very abusive. And it was just not a super good scenario. And during that time, like, I had no idea what a boundary was. I didn't know I can even have a boundary. So there were a lot of situations that came up during our time there where I couldn't really speak up. I was saying yes to things that I meant no to. I couldn't even say, like, if it was really cold, do you mind if we turn the heat up? I would just adjust and just stay quiet. I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. I didn't want to be a burden. And I think a lot of that stems from like childhood stuff where I always felt like I was walking on eggshells with my caregivers, my parents. So for me, like, I always became like the people pleaser, right? I wanted to make sure everybody else was happy, and I would put everybody else's needs above my own, and I would adopt other people's beliefs or just agree with them even though I had a whole different, you know, belief or thought about something, just so that it wouldn't upset them because I valued their needs more than my own truth. So what's cool about this and the two of us is after that particular living situation, some time has passed where we were apart. I was living in New York and she was in Central America even, and back to Oregon. We both came back to Oregon where we live now at the exact same time, which was so funny. Like she was here like maybe a week or two before me. But we ended up living together again with a different roommate, and it was so unexpected. We weren't planning on it at all. It just turned out that way. We manifested each other again as roommates, and we now came into this living situation after having worked on boundaries separately coming into the situation, and it was just like such an improved
it was like
situation.
2.0 version.
It was just a whole different level of our friendship even, but as well as having boundaries at home in the living situations and with other roommates and people that were in the house as well. So it's just been something that we've watched together come full circle. And of course, we're still in our process and we're still learning and we're still practicing. So there's still situations where it's hard to implement boundaries, but it's just about having the conscious awareness about it, I think. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, you guys. I'll let Beatrice kind of take that away, although I did speak for some of the stuff for both of us, probably.
That's okay. So I'm B. I call myself B, and you can too. And I grew up in a family where self-sacrificing was like really valued and honored, and like that's the way that you got love in my family, was to self-sacrifice. And so like I grew up like not having a sense of self. I grew up as a codependent, and like still to this day I struggle with like a lot of codependent tendencies, but it's about, like he said, like practicing like self-awareness and just like checking in with yourself. But yeah, so because I grew up in a family with with that honored self-sacrificing and just like abandoning yourself and not really like checking in with what you wanted and what you needed, it played out in my adult life as like being somebody who, like he said, like always said yes when I meant no. And I constantly found myself getting really upset at myself and like kind of having like a self-abuse kind of like dynamic with myself when I would do that, when I would say yes when I didn't want to do something. Like I would like be in the car and I'd be like, God, like what the fuck is wrong with you, kind of a self-talk. Like, why do you always do this to yourself? And I just like would shame myself and just like add on like more layers to like the pain that I was already experiencing from like not honoring my own boundaries. And also like physically, you know, if you don't set boundaries, like that can manifest physically. So I've gained, like my whole life I've always been like really overweight, and I really think that is like contributed to just the fact that like I didn't have any boundaries, like so physically like that played out with like me like gaining weight and like kind of keeping people pushed away like in that sense. But yeah, I'm still, like he said, it's like a process. I've been really lucky to have some one-on-one time with Teal Swan, who's amazing, and she's really reflected like a lot of things to me and like just helped me grow as somebody was like an extreme codependent and who had like no boundaries. So it was really beautiful to see like the dynamic of like where me and Matthew were at the first time we lived together, and then like where we were at the second time, you know, that we lived together, which was just like in May. And I mean, it's just been like a 360 really, like you know, I was able to, for the first time, like sit down with one of our roommates and like tell her like, this is what I need, this is what I want, like I can't do this and this. And like that's something I've never been able to do. Like I've been able to like tell it to other people, but like not to the person that's like directly like affecting me with, you know. So being able to do that was like super huge. And yeah, it's just, and now we're here and we're wanting to help like other people be able to express their boundaries, attract safe people into their lives that will honor their boundaries. And yeah, we just want to see you thrive in whatever way we can support you. So please, you know, if you do, again, have any questions or comments, leave them in the chat box and we'll address them.
Absolutely. And then do you want to talk about how we're going to meet them where they're at and everything?
Yeah, I already did.
Cool. So it's kind of all included in there.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we're just going to kind of jump right in as far as defining like what a boundary even is.
Mm-hmm.
And when you kind of come into more of the spiritual community, what we're really taught boundaries are like some kind of a wall or some type of fence that is meant to like keep things out. Yes, boundaries can be used in protective senses like that, but that's not all that a boundary is. So to kind of really whittle down what a boundary is nothing more than a sense of self. Yeah. It's knowing who you are versus who this other person is, who I am separate from the universe, right? A boundary is a line that separates 5 different things. I have a little list here. Feel free to take notes, or there will be obviously the replay. So a boundary is a line that separates your personal happiness, your personal integrity, your personal desires, your personal needs, and your personal truth from the rest of the universe. And boundaries can only be defined by you. You're going to be the one that knows what's right for you versus what's wrong for you, what you like versus what you dislike. And boundaries can be something as simple as knowing what your favorite flavor of ice cream is. Let's say that my favorite ice cream is chocolate, right? And that hers might be vanilla. Yeah, those are different versions of boundaries, but we can still coexist. Or for example, let's say like our favorite fruit was bananas, right? And we both came together over our love for bananas and made like raw vegan banana ice cream and shared in that together. That's an example of how boundaries and knowing what you like can actually bring people together as well and bring you into situations that feel good, that are harmonizing. So it's not all about like, what can I keep away from me? Like, no, stay away. But it's also something that can help you to bring in the types of people and situations and experiences that actually feel good to you. Mm-hmm. So it can actually be something that's super beneficial. And once you can kind of define what those different boundaries might be, you can use them to make your life freaking awesome.
Yeah, I so agree. Like I honestly, like when I think about boundaries, I think about like if we would have our own like manual on our life to give to other people or even just have for ourselves to reflect on, like they'd just basically be like the rules on just us and our personal like what do I want to say?
Like truth.
Yeah, our personal truths, you know, and they like a lot of different things with the human body and mind and spirit and essence is like they can and they will change constantly. And so it's okay if at one point, like, you know, a boundary for you or like a rule for you is like when I get home, like I need some alone time if I have like a really long, crazy day. Like it's okay if that's like your rule, like 1 month, and then, you know, a few months later you live with like your best friends and then you don't need that boundary anymore. Like things are gonna like constantly shift and change, and like you'll notice that. But I think like the most important thing is just to be aware of like what it is in that moment. But yeah, so that's kind of just my definition, just like who I am, like you said, like a sense of self and what I like and what I don't like and what I want and what I don't want, and just being like really grounded in that.
Yeah, and it's really important to note, like she said, like your boundaries can be reevaluated.
Yeah.
So like let's say once you've established a boundary that you have, it doesn't mean that it has to exist forever. You can question it whether it's still beneficial for you, because sometimes a boundary can become detrimental at one point as well. Let's say that you want too much space, then you're feeling like devoid of connection with people. Yeah. So you might make a change to that boundary or make an exception, or maybe it only applies in certain circumstances.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really good to get specific, about what it is. And a fun exercise, I remember Teal Swan actually teaching people, for people that don't really have a sense of self, don't have these boundaries, what you get to do, and it's a really fun experiment. This is kind of something that you can do after this workshop if it feels fun for you. But basically you pretend that you're like an alien coming to this world for the first time, right? So you're going to be in the perspective of an like extraterrestrial that has no idea what any of these experiences are like. And then you're going to basically go throughout your day and you're going to choose your preferences and things that like you identify with as if they're things that you're experiencing for the first time. So you might be still eating foods that you've eaten before, but now you're going to be seeing it from a whole new perspective. Like, what do I like about this? how come I like this? What does this taste like to me? Does this feel good for me? And you just kind of like have your entire day be like you're experiencing those things for the first time. And it can also go with people. It's like, what do I like about this person? What don't I like about this person? How does it make me feel to be around this person? And basically what you do is you just go through every different thing that you're doing in your life. And it can be like the big things, like questioning relationships that you're in or jobs that you work at. Like, why am I here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It can be big things or it can be small things like, oh, I don't like this thing that you all call toilet paper. It's too rough. Or you know what I mean? Maybe I'll go buy a softer one. I don't know. So it's like all kinds of things.
Spray of water.
Or that, yeah, that can be an interesting experience if you've never done that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that can be like a fun exercise when you feel like you don't even know like you have that big of a sense of self. If you're not sure what those things are, play the game of I'm an alien and I'm going to see what these things truly feel like for the first time. And in that way, it allows you to still go about your day, but what you're doing is you're reevaluating everything as if you've never felt it or experienced it or had it before.
And honestly, like it's pretty common for people to not really have like a really good sense of self. And I'm just wondering, like, is that something that you guys struggle with, Anthony and Elizabeth?
Yeah, feel free to chime in the chat box. And then I also have some reasons here, because obviously there's a reason that we're not already doing these things or living this way.
Yeah.
It's because of the childhood dynamic that we experience, but also socialization and the society we live in, right? We're not really brought up to do this. We're not really taught this, right? Otherwise we'd know all about it already. So I wrote down some main reasons here. Like, it's hard to set boundaries because we were taught to put other people's needs and feelings before our own. Which caused us to not know ourselves because we're so hyper-focused on making sure everybody else's needs are met. And that's what we usually had to do in certain circumstances to get love from people, to get attention from people, to feel significant, to feel important, to function in society, to function in our households. And then sometimes, like, because of those dynamics, we don't feel like we even have the right to set boundaries. We don't feel like that's something that we can actually do. We don't have the power to do that. We feel powerless. We also can sometimes believe that setting boundaries will jeopardize the relationships that we're in, whether it's with family, friends, or loved ones and partners. We feel like setting boundaries is just not good because what it's going to do is destroy the relationship. But honestly, a healthy relationship, I think, is something that sits on a solid foundation of healthy boundaries. So it causes you to kind of really reevaluate things. And then, yeah, because of this, we never got to learn healthy boundaries. Our personal truths of what was right for us versus other people was constantly invalidated over and over and over and over. And we basically had to accept the truth of other people around us, most often our parents or our caregivers. Whatever they said was what went, and we didn't really have that big of a say in things all the time. It was always invalidated.
And the scariest thing about that also is when your family withdraws love from you, like when they just like totally abandon you and they like kind of turn against you when you do express boundaries. That's something that happens quite often, or at least in my childhood that happened a lot. If I expressed a boundary, like they would just withdraw from me and basically continue to do that until I either like conformed and like decided, like did what they wanted me to do, or actually that was like really the only option I had was to do what they wanted me to do, you know, like thinking about it. So
it helps you to stay safe, and it's so understandable why we did those things in those moments. But now the time has come for us, especially if you're a vibrational match to seeing this, whether it's live or the replay. It's time to come into our boundaries and to evaluate whether what we're currently doing and practicing is beneficial or useful. And if there's ways that we can improve on that. So that's what this is all about. And it's not something that you really can do A to Z overnight. You know, it's kind of a process. And it just takes time to make those adjustments, but you just kind of do what feels good for you in each moment, and just becoming conscious of even knowing that you might have a boundary that's being violated. That can be a huge issue right there that we can look at. So it's just becoming aware and becoming conscious of these things, and then applying what feels good. That's what it's all about. We kind of wanted to start off with a little exercise. So we're just going to kind of bounce some ideas and scenarios around, and then if you guys feel called to in the comments, We'd love to hear like what your responses would be into these different scenarios and situations, but also know that you can just write them down, whatever feels good, and then we'll kind of provide like what we might do in those scenarios. So I know you had a good example.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also just want to say, like, if it's a boundary for you to not share, like, that's totally okay. Like, there's no expectation from us.
No obligation. We only want you to do things that feel good to do. So you get to have that boundary if you don't feel like you want to share those responses. By no means do you have to.
And this is also just a good time to practice like self-awareness and just check in with yourself. So one of the examples that I was thinking of, it's actually like a very personal example. But let's say that you come home from a really, really, really long day, and your whole drive home, all you could think about was how excited you are to go upstairs, go to your room, be alone, and just lay down and chill out. And like, I don't know if you like popping in a DVD or going on social media, whatever you like to do to relax. Like that was your plan the whole way home. And then when you get home, your roommate stops and is talking to you, like talking your ear off and like talking nonstop. And it's been like 20 minutes already. And like the whole time, all you can think about is wanting to go upstairs. So what would you do in that scenario? And again, you can write it down or you can share it with us.
Yeah, and we'll like maybe give a minute or so if you want to come up with a response if that feels good for you. But also know too, if this feels like something that maybe you'd want to do a different time, that you guys are going to have unlimited access to the recording of this training. So you can play this back and try to figure those situations out if it feels good to do it later.
Yeah, what we want is just for you to practice self-awareness. So, and check in. So, whatever you want. So yeah, we'll give you a minute. It's 2:01 Pacific time right now. So.
Yeah, I'll give you guys a minute. Just what would you do in that situation where you've had a long day, you just want to come home and relax, but someone that you live with stops you and wants to share like a 20-minute story about their day, but you just don't have the energy for it. And your instinct, your boundary would be to say no. So what would you feel that you would do? And it's okay if you feel like you would still like, listen to them if you're not at that point yet. Like what would you authentically do in that situation, basically? And we can work with that. We have a good one too that just happened this morning. So I love personal examples.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a boundary for me to have this drink in my life a lot.
Yes, okay.
All right. What do you think? Want to give an example of like what you did or would do in that scenario?
Yeah. So,
we got something here. So hang on, I gotta scroll because whoever wrote disappeared. Yeah. Hey, Anthony wrote, I'd feel bad if I didn't listen. I'd give in out of obligation. I'd fear getting an unpleasant reaction by them and don't want them to be upset. Completely understandable and totally valid, and I get that completely.
That is so common. Like, honestly, that is something that I struggled with so hard. And like, again, this is a process. So like, that's something that I'm still continuing working on myself. Like, I so get that. And I just want to say, like, if you can find just like even one friend that's like super safe and that you're really comfortable with, like to just practice like expressing that, to them, that, and like being a matchless workshop, just by virtue of like being here, is going to change your vibration to attract these like more like safer people in your lives. But like, yeah, I totally get that. And I've been there and I still struggle with that. So that's totally common.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Elizabeth says, I still have a hard time speaking up for my own needs, especially if a friend emotionally needs to talk. Yeah. I put others first and I feel I need to be there for them regardless of what I have going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've so been there before too, and it's definitely tough because it's like we have this desire to want to help them, but it's like at what expense to us, So it's one of those things where it's hard to run on an empty tank. And to be able to do those kinds of things for other people when we don't actually have the wherewithal within us, and it would actually cause us to feel worse after it's over. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and honestly, like it's kind of like one of those things where you just gotta like get to the point to where like you like realize that like you're the most important thing right now in your world, you know, and like the way you're feeling. Like you just gotta get to a point where like it's just like so valuable to like honor yourself, and like that's okay. Like it's understandable if you guys are both like having a hard time and like feeling bad about like speaking up for yourself. Like, you know, that obviously says a lot about like your environment growing up and the type of people that were around you growing up.
What was expected of you to do. What made you a good person, right?
And I have so much compassion for that.
Yeah. Same here. Yeah. Absolutely do. And even if nothing is to change from these circumstances, just becoming conscious of them changes everything, because you're going to become so much more hyper aware that you're making that choice. It's now going to become a choice more than just a default response or reaction to that situation.
That's so true. So anytime you do have these situations come up, you can take it, you can react to it from a space of empowerment and be like, okay, well, I know that I'm violating my own boundaries, but I'm choosing to talk to this person, or I'm choosing out of obligation that I'm gonna violate my own boundaries. Like, and that's so much more empowering than just like being like, okay, I'm gonna give in, and just like, you know, like even the whole like energy of that's just like different, you know?
Exactly. And so, what like, you might find, like if let's say that you do that like 3-4 times in a row, by the time that fifth scenario comes up, you might feel differently. You might be like, okay, I've done this so many times. I want to see what it would be like to not do it. And you can kind of make that kind of a playful, kind of light and easy kind of thing. Okay, I'm curious to see what would happen now if I did the opposite.
Yeah.
And see what would happen there. You might feel inspired or called to try something different the more you become conscious of what it is that you're doing. And by virtue of focusing on what it would be like to have good boundaries and to see what it would feel like to feel good, you're going to bring more experiences and attract more scenarios into your life where you actually get to experience the positive benefits of having boundaries. So just by placing your focus on, you know, creating more harmonious relationships and situations in your life, you're going to bring those about. So you're going to have more opportunities to where you get to exercise those good boundaries.
Yeah. I also want to say, like, I kind of hate saying this, but I'm just going to say it. But like, practicing this kind of stuff with your parents is probably, like, in your family, is probably like a least ideal situation. Like, if this scenario is going on with like a family member, like just because, you know, we're all kind of like at different spaces, but like our family is the one that's caused us a lot of trauma and pain and upset. Like ideally, especially like with where we're all at, like right now, like not only just me and Matthew, but like you guys, like ideally, you know, if you can practice with a friend, I think that would be a more ideal situation. I just wanted to throw that out there. But also, like, you know, you guys, Anthony and Elizabeth, like potentially maybe even you two could practice boundaries with each other. Like even if you don't live near each other, like maybe you can, if it feels good, like continue to like talk and like have a friendship, and you know, like maybe one day like Elizabeth will want to Skype with you online, and you're not feeling it, Anthony, and like you can take that moment to just like practice expressing like how you're feeling and where you're at, and that way, because like once you start practicing, that will build confidence. Like that's the thing with like confidence, is like you just need to practice
and then celebrate the little wins along the way.
Oh, so true.
Oh man, even
having that reflected back is so nice. Like Matthew, like when I tell him about stuff, I'm like, oh my God, guess what I said to so and so? Like I totally expressed my boundaries. Like he'll celebrate it with me, like, wow, you're so good at boundaries. And I'm like, yeah, I know, right? You know, so like we like reflect that back to each other, like how, you know, proud we are of each other, and like, yeah, like you said, we celebrate each other's wins.
Yes.
Yeah.
It can be something as big or something as little as like I told somebody that I didn't want to eat that piece of fruit that they offered me. You know, and that's a huge win right there, because that's you standing up for your personal truth and what it is that you wanted or didn't want in that moment. And it kind of brings me to another example for an exercise that I wanted to bring up, which was this morning. I woke up and a roommate of mine was downstairs when I was ready to leave the house. And overnight, we have a food dehydrator where you can make like raw vegan foods in it or whatever. So they usually take like all night. It's like an overnight process, right? So she was checking to see how the things came out, and she was saying, "Oh my God, this is good. This is amazing. Blah 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 blah." But for me, a personal boundary for me is like I cannot accept food into my body until at least like the afternoon. I'm not someone that can eat breakfast personally for my body. Like I have to have a time period of like fasting or just cleansing with liquids before I eat anything. So for me, it was too early for food. But part of me was like already I was feeling that aspect of me come up that was gonna feel bad for like turning it down. And of course, it was something like I would actually want to try. Like actually it did smell good and it did look really good and it was tempting, but I knew like my boundary for me is I can't eat that early. So what I chose to do is I became conscious of what I was feeling really quickly in that moment, and I was able to express that while this smells and looks amazing, if there's any left later, I'll try them. And that I'm just not able to eat food that early. And my roommate has heard me say that before, so it wasn't something that was like completely out of the blue. So she had compassion for that. She's like, yeah, totally, I get that. So by virtue of me being able to express that, I was able to still have a peaceful situation there. But if it did not, let's say like it didn't get taken well, it wasn't received well, let's say that she was really hurt and upset about that. What I can do, if it feels good for me, is I can still have my boundary of not eating it, but also validate and be there for that person and the feelings that come up as a result of me asserting my boundary. So let's say that she expressed that she feels like sad and disappointed. I can tell her, I so see that you're feeling sad and disappointed. It makes perfect sense to be feeling now. In fact, I would feel the same way if I were you and someone wasn't wanting something that I had spent a lot of time to create. And just validate the way that they're feeling, like that's like something that can really show them that you care. Because sometimes I think some people might take it the wrong way. When we're asserting boundaries, it makes it seem like we're not being considerate of them, which isn't what boundaries are about at all. It's just about you having your sense of self and living your truth, your integrity. So you can still have that and still be there for people at the same time.
Also, like a lot of people put like a lot of their like worth into things that they're offering you, and so if you're like saying no, you don't want that, like they're like making it mean that they put on their meaning glasses and make it mean all kinds of different things. So like I have a lot of like anxious attachment friends, and so if I like can't hold space for them or be there for them, I will just let them know like, hey, I love you so much and you mean so much to me, and just like at this moment right now, I just am not able to be present with you. And like that line has like helped my friendships so much, because before, like if I'm kind of going back to my situation too, but like before, like if something came up where somebody needed me and they were like emotional and I just for whatever reason like couldn't be there for them, like I would just get like really uncomfortable and like angry at myself and have that negative self-talk and just kind of like do self-punishment type stuff. And also like not even be really present for them because I didn't want to be present for them in the first place. And so it would just be this like weird thing where like I was there physically, but I wasn't really there. So yeah, like I think just giving like, like learning to attune to friends is and like people is a really big thing that's going to be really helpful for you when it comes to like asserting boundaries. But just like reassurance, if it is like if we go back to that situation I was talking about where you just want to like run upstairs and go to your room and you can't take time to talk to this person, just letting them know like I would love to hear about your day and like what happened and what you were up to and what you did. Like there's nothing more than I love than like hearing about your day and connecting with you. But at this moment, like right now, I what my need that's overriding this is just to be alone because I'm so overstimulated. That's me personally. So yeah, and then also I just wanted to let you guys know like what I did end up doing with that roommate. Every day it was becoming a pattern where every day I was coming home like super overstimulated and just like overwhelmed and like needing to go upstairs and be alone. And I let this go on for about a week. before I finally was like, wow, like I realized like, wow, this isn't gonna stop. Like, cause I truly thought, just from like an innocent perspective, like innocence, that like it wasn't gonna be like an everyday thing. And I was like, okay, well, like I can do this like a couple of days a week, whatever. But it just was continuing to happen where she needed to talk to me like for 20 minutes, a half hour. One time it was even an hour. And so finally I sat down with her, and I was like, my heart was like racing, and I probably was like freaking out a little inside. But I told her that it's just, I have this need of like just this need of like destimulating when I get home. And that means like what it looks like is when I walk in the door, like the most I might be able to do like conversation wise is just like, hey, how are you doing? And I told her like that doesn't mean that I'm not interested in what you have to say and like your day. Like I really am interested in it. But I just have this need that's a lot greater, and I really am practicing like boundaries and self-care. And so when I come home, like I need to be able to feel safe enough to just say hi to you and then go upstairs and go to my room and chill out there for a couple hours before I come down and have like a conversation with you. And I also told her like that's true for me in the morning. Like when I first wake up, I can't come downstairs and sit down at the table and have like a full-on conversation with somebody. So I also included that in there, since I had felt safe enough to talk about my coming home boundary. I was also like, and in the morning, actually, I can't have like full drawn long conversations because I'm barely like awake, and I'm trying to like get embodied from like a night of like, whatever. And yeah, so luckily like she was really receptive to it and open to it. But I think what was really helpful was just letting her know that like I really cared, and I did and was really interested in what she had to say. It was just that like I had this need that like needed to be honored, and she was really receptive to it. So I feel really lucky.
I think that's so beautiful. And it's like one of those things too where it's like she might have no idea, whoever the person is in that situation might have had no idea that you felt that way until you express what your needs and what your emotions were in those moments. Yeah,
she really didn't, because whenever I would come home, like I was always like smiling at her and like engaging with her to the best of my ability, at the time. And so she had no idea. So when I told her, she was like almost shocked. She was like, wow, like I had no idea like you like needed alone time and like you couldn't have these conversations. So
and then something just to kind of play on that situation, because I was there for that. It was really funny. The law of attraction, after she was able to communicate her boundaries to this roommate then attracted a situation with having someone that she knew stay over with us. Do you remember that person? It was something like a very similar dynamic where her friend that was staying over at her house played the same role. So it was essentially like a roommate that she expressed boundaries to now had to basically express those same boundaries to her friend that was staying over, because her friend was very demanding and commanding of attention, and our roommate wasn't able to provide that to her at all times. So it helped her to open her eyes up to see like what was really truly happening there.
The dynamic between me and her, it was played out between her friend and my roommate. And so it really helped her. She was like, she sent us a message. She's like, you guys, I'm so sorry. Like I didn't realize like this is what it was like, and this is what I was doing. Like I truly had no idea. And so like it was just really like unconscious. And because I got to like express my needs to her, and I just made her aware of like what it was doing to me, like it like eventually like even helped her, like so it was a really cool situation altogether.
And it helped me even too, because until I heard that she had expressed her boundaries about that, it didn't even occur to me that I could too.
He hadn't expressed his boundaries to her yet, and I don't even think I told you that I did it. I think she was the one that told you.
Me. And then she asked me, do you feel a similar way? And I hadn't really thought too deeply in it. I wasn't super aware of it or super conscious of it, but by hearing that she did that, I was like, wow, you know what? I actually do feel a really similar way. I'm so happy that we're talking about this. So I got inspired by her, and it really kind of made me realize like how I was truly feeling. It caused me to tap in and be present with how I was feeling. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Like I didn't realize that was even an option until she had already went and did it. So just by virtue of you expressing your boundaries, you're helping everybody else around you.
You really are
inspiring them to want to do the same. But there's also going to be situations too. So like, let's say that like the situation were different, right? Let's say like this can help you to really identify like areas in your life that might not be serving you, or people that might not be serving you. So let's say that in this example of coming home from a long day, and this person approaches you that wants to spend a lot of time with you, talking to you. You know, in her example, what Beatrice was saying, like something that you could say is, there's nothing more than I would love but to hear about your day, but right now it's a boundary for me to do this. You might learn by virtue of expressing your boundaries, like, you know what, like deep down inside, what you learn is, you know what, I actually don't want to hear about it. And it's okay.
Yeah.
You might have boundaries that might make you question whether you're a good or bad person. You know, sometimes having boundaries can bring up shame. So there's nothing wrong with you realizing that, even though it might feel that way at the time, and it makes perfect sense why you'd feel that way.
Yeah, because you were shamed, you know, you were shamed for like wanting what you wanted and not wanting what you know, like you were shamed for all that.
So by virtue of becoming conscious of whether your boundaries are being violated or not, or just when you're identifying them, you might come into the awareness where, you know what, like not only do you not want to do it, but like you just don't care to at all. Even if you had the time or the energy, or you weren't, you know, prioritizing something else over it, you might not even have wanted to do it in the first place.
Oh my God, I have such a good example of that.
Do it. Yeah, okay. Let's roll.
So a really good example of that is when our roommate told us that she wanted us to clean up her mess in the garage. Like, it was disgusting. It was not only her mess, it was her previous roommate's mess. And it was like disgusting, cluttered, like, and me and Matthew, like, we had nothing. Like, we came with like 3 suitcases. And like, so we had no reason to use the garage or the basement or whatever you want to call it. Like, we had no reason to use it. We had no reason to be down there. But her expectation was that we help her with it. And we both kind of like, we didn't feel good at all. Like, when she was talking to us, like, we both were sitting there and like, there was just a lot of tension in the room. And finally, I think I was the one to say it first. I was like,
it didn't affect me as bad, but I think you have like a trigger come up in that moment, because I can't remember specifically what it was. But
I had a trigger, but in addition to the trigger, like, I just didn't want to do it. Like, I didn't feel like it was fair that she was expecting me to clean up a mess that her and her previous roommates made. And I didn't think it was fair that that was her expectation. And so I told her that it didn't feel good for me to do that. And then she said that it didn't feel good for her to hear that. So then Matthew, what did you tell her?
Well, basically, I had to be like the mediator in that situation, because both of them had gone into fight or flight mode, essentially, right?
Like, no, I'm talking about, because you were like, oh, well, what would feel good is if we could just clean that little space.
I forgot about that. Yeah, so before that even happened, basically, like, the reason we would even go into that space is because that's where the washer and dryer are. So I was like, I'd be happy to like clear out what's along the way to that, since that's what we're actually utilizing. And none of our stuff, none of our stuff that was down there, but
it was all there.
I like offered an alternative that felt good for me. Like, I would be willing to do that part of it. So I was willing to share what I was actually willing and fine with.
So that's what I'm talking about, though. Like, if somebody like throws something at you that you don't even want to do at all, like, and it's not like a boundary that's like super like what am I trying to say? Like this, that like there you are leaving a little wiggle room with, like, you could even do something like that. Like, I didn't want to clean the whole garage, but like, oh, I would be willing to clean that little area where the washer and dryer is, because I do use that area. Like, you can compromise like doing that, so that way she or your whoever like feels like, you know, they're getting like that we're all kind of like helping out. And
yeah, so it's going to come to the point where, like, when you're evaluating situations or your boundaries, like, you may come into that awareness where it's like, you know what, like, I'm actually not okay with that, and that's okay. You're allowed to feel that way. You're allowed to not want to do certain things or to not want to have certain experiences. So that'll kind of help cause you to maybe want to move in the direction of what you'd prefer instead. So just by virtue of having boundaries, you're going to be paving your way to a life that feels better to live. You're going to be doing things that you actually want to be doing. So that's kind of the benefit that comes out of it.
And I just wanted to bring, since he started talking about it, like, I actually did, expressing that boundary of like not wanting to help out with the garage did make me go into fight or flight, because just like confrontation, like what I perceive as confrontation triggers me and also makes me go into flight or fight. So also, you know, I think just practicing self-awareness with that, and like feeling into your body, like, do I feel like I want to run right now? Because if you are feeling like you want to run or hide or get away from the situation, that's trauma. You know, that's a trigger that's coming up, and you're in fight or fight. You're trying to run. So practice noticing that, guys, like, because that's something that's like really beneficial for you to know. And Teal, there's a lot of like awesome self-help stuff, inner child work stuff, and Teal Swan has like videos, and we're practitioners as well. And so if any of that stuff, or she even has a book, you can take yourself through the completion process, or like whatever process feels good. Like there's a lot on that, but like, yeah, I think it's a really good practice to realize, to like check in with yourself and like see how you're feeling when it comes to like speaking up for yourself and like speaking your truth and like setting those boundaries, because literally like that is fight or fight. If you feel like you want to run away, or if you're having like a hard time like doing something or saying something or coming through with that, that's just like trauma.
That's a perfect opening. So I'm just going to jump here, then we'll come back to this.
Okay.
That's cool. Since we're talking about like what it is to have feelings and emotions being involved, basically your feelings will always tell you whether or not your boundaries are being violated. So what we kind of learn to do in coming into healthy boundaries is learning to care about how we feel more than anything else. And a boundary is something that also is kind of linked to self-trust. And because we really weren't able to have boundaries as a child, we stopped trusting ourselves. Self-trust is all about boundaries, but where does self-trust start when it comes to boundaries and emotions? Basically, whenever an uncomfortable emotion arises within you, a lot of people try to run away from that, try to get themselves out of it, or try to distract themselves. I'm going to go eat some food as my coping mechanism, you know what I mean? Anything I can do to get myself to feel better and not actually be with that emotion. But what that is self-abandonment. So it's kind of like when you're feeling, like, let's even use that abandonment as an example. Let's say that you're feeling abandoned because somebody left you, and what you go to do is you go to binge on a bunch of food and you try to make yourself feel better by watching a happy movie. Basically, it's like an inner child version of you that you're abandoning and you're ignoring, and you're letting it cry over there in the corner while you go over here and watch a movie. So basically what self-trust is, and where it begins, is being with yourself even during the uncomfortable moments, being present with those emotions, moving in the direction of them instead of away from them. And what you'll find is not only are you going to be alerted to how you truly feel, but you're going to move through those feelings, you're going to move through those experiences into a naturally higher feeling state just by virtue of being present with yourself. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it builds a bond and strengthens the bond that you have within your own being, within your body. And that's going to start to build that level of self-trust, which allows you to feel more confident and safer to have boundaries when you have that level of self-trust. So it's all about not abandoning yourself in those moments. And like she mentioned, just becoming conscious even is a huge part of that, knowing that it's even taking place. So like when you feel a trigger come up, or it is like that fight or flight response, you can be like, okay, this is happening right now. You can look at it almost like from a different perspective. Like Teal has a really awesome kind of technique to use when you're in that mode, is imagine like basically we're seeing everything through a particular lens right now, right? It's the meaning that we're adding to the situation. So imagine it's like when you're in fight or flight mode, you're looking through this scenario and at this person through a telescope. What you can choose to do is now back out of that perspective so that you're actually watching yourself looking through the telescope. And what you have access to is this bigger picture of what's really going on here. And from that perspective, what you can do is choose how you react, and not just subconsciously react or, unconsciously choose fight or flight, where you can actually choose how you want to respond and what feels good for you, and how can you be there for yourself in that moment and really check in with yourself. Yeah. So that was just kind of a little segue, but it really does begin with paying attention to how you feel, because that's how you're going to know whether or not your boundaries are being asserted or whether they're being violated. And learning how to feel, learning to express emotion, that's something that takes some time to do. But there are a lot of resources out there. This isn't specifically entitled Workshop for Emotions, but like Teal Swan has a wealth of videos on YouTube to learn how to do this.
But it all plays together, like
Yeah.
your emotions and boundaries, like it's all interconnected. So, you know, you are going to hear us talk about it because it's the truth of what it is. Like this boundaries are a sense of self and also like linked to your emotions. So that's why we are talking about it.
Yeah, it's all connected together and it all does play a role. So it does have to be mentioned. We just got
Question
from Elizabeth here. Most of my boundary issues are with my mother. She's extremely demanding that everyone stop what they are doing immediately and help her do what she wants. Saying no to her, she just yells or shames and guilt traps.
That's the worst. Like seriously, that is so fucking dangerous. Like being with that kind of human and like energy is so poisonous and dangerous. Like I just want to reflect that to you right now. Like that is really
It's
scary.
painful.
Yeah, it's fucking scary. So do you live with her?
I don't think so, but we can find out for sure.
Not anymore. Oh, thank God. Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that. So when does she still do this to you? Like now that you don't, can you give us like a little more information? Like when did she have, like give me a scenario when this happened after you moved out with her. Like what was it?
Yeah. That's so tough.
Or do you visit her a lot? Is that something that you do?
Especially it's really hard when like we try to assert a boundary but people retaliate with like yelling or making you feel bad about yourself. Like that's so controlling and so manipulative and doesn't feel good. So it says it's her constant behavior. She'll call out of the blue to make demands.
So I mean, like where I go, you know, where my brain goes is just that like, well, you get the choice to answer or not. And you get to, and if you do decide to answer, like what we were talking about earlier, make it an empowered choice and be like, okay, I know she's going to violate my boundaries and I know it's going to be a really shitty call and it's not going to feel good, but I'm going to answer because that's the choice that I'm making right now. And then also like you also have the option of just not answering and even like blocking her and or you know before you block her be like this is really inappropriate and right now it's affecting me in a negative way and I just like it doesn't feel good for me to have this with you right now. And then like just I know like it's really painful and like cutting out family members from your life is not like a feel good thing, but like you're gonna have to, you know, like you get to this point where like you have to be like, okay, like I am more important than anything else. And also like if that doesn't feel good, then you can limit the time that you do give the energy that you do give her. So like if you can't, that's like jumping the Grand Canyon and just cutting her out completely, like for right now is jumping the Grand Canyon, you can just like maybe just like once a week, like, you know, answer her call and take that empowered choice of like, all right, I'm gonna talk to her and I know she's gonna violate my boundaries, but this is what's gonna happen.
And by virtue of you making that a conscious choice, what you prefer is just going to become more and more obvious until you feel inspired to want to take the action to do it. But to also have compassion on yourself during this process, because it is a process and it does take time to become comfortable and become confident to be able to voice what your emotional needs are and the way that you're feeling. So know that even if you do consciously choose to have those situations still and you're making it a conscious choice, obviously you're doing it because you know it's going to help you to feel at least a little bit better in that moment. That's kind of something to realize about life in general. Like the only reason we do anything at all in this life is because we think it's going to make us feel better to do that thing. So there's always a hidden positive intention behind everything that we do because we think it's going to make us feel better to do that thing. Like the reason that we're on this workshop is because we think it's going to cause us to feel better to teach this information. We think that for you guys, it's going to cause you to feel better to learn this information. So the reason we do anything in life, no matter how big or how small it is because we want a feeling. We want to feel better. So to know that if you're still making the choice to consciously have your boundaries violated, but it's a conscious choice that you're aware of, you're still doing it because it's going to cause you to feel better to do that thing. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. So that's something that we can totally have compassion for, because you're just trying to feel better. And that's what we're all trying to do. We're all in the same boat together. But you just got to do what feels inspired and feels good to do. So maybe down the road that might not be the case anymore. You might realize, you know what, like I'm making a change, and the more inner work that you do will really cause you to make that shift, because you won't be a match anymore to those kind of experiences. So it really all does come together, but just making it a conscious choice is everything, because awareness is the first agent for change.
Yeah. And honestly, like my mom is very similar to that. Like in my childhood, it was very similar to that. And I limit my time with my family and my parents, especially. Like I will probably see them, you know, every other week, and because we live in the same area, and I set like a boundary to just be with them for an hour, or if it doesn't feel good, I'll leave before that. And you don't know like how often they shame me and they get angry at me and they guilt me over that. They, especially in the Latino community, like, you know, families first before everything else. And like me not wanting to spend time with them is like really like it really is painful for them. And they take that out on me by doing exactly what like your mom does. And, you know, like what I do when that happens is I just listen to them, and I like will like, it's like, yeah, I get that. Like that hurts. Yeah. You know, but this is like my rules that I have for myself. Like I don't really talk about boundaries because they don't understand it. I always call it rules when I talk to them. Like, well, this is like my rule, you know? And if they don't like it, like that's not your problem though. Like that's the thing, is like, it's not your fault. It's not your problem. Like that's them. And if they continue to do that, like, it's just kind of like one of those things, like, do I really want to keep putting energy into this pattern of like letting somebody like manipulate me and hurt me, you know, like because I want to make them happy, like happier over myself? Like it's unfair. It's unfair to yourself. And like, but yeah, I get that. Like what he was saying, like I have a lot of compassion for you, and I think that's definitely something, like just being really gentle with yourself, like, you know. And I know that there's parts of you that really love your mom, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be connected to her, and you wouldn't be, you know, answering her phone calls. And I have a lot of compassion for that. It shows that you have a really big heart, and, you know, that you just are really like, you know, unconditional when it comes to your love. And I think it's just really a time to like ask yourself, like, what's more important for me right now? Is it more important for me to have a connection with my mom, or is it more important for me to like honor my boundaries? Mm-hmm. Like, because you know that you're not going to get your mom at this point where she's at to honor your boundaries. So you're going to have to like take a look at that and ask yourself what's more important. And then again, it goes back to like the empowered choice, and then you get to make that empowered choice. So and it changes all the time. Just because, like, let's say like it's more important to connect with your mom right now and to be in contact with her, like that doesn't mean that like in 3 months you can't change that. And maybe it'll be more important for you to like honor your boundaries in 3 months. So like, and there's nothing to feel like, it's not, there's no like right or wrong. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think also another important thing just to kind of keep in mind is like to really pay attention to how you feel. Even if you're making those conscious choices to allow your boundaries to be violated, like check in with yourself and just let yourself see how you feel. And then also like kind of go through scenarios in your minds, because sometimes a lot of us will have these like impending doom, like worst case scenarios kind of floating around our minds, but we tend to do more often than entertain those as we run away from them, or we try not to think about them or distract ourselves from them. But what that is resistance, and we're just going to keep bringing in situations because what you resist persists, right? So what you can do is actually let yourself kind of go through different scenarios in your head if you have that opportunity, like where you have time to think the situation through. You can actually sit there and see, how would it make me feel if this happened? How would it make me feel if I did this? How would it make me feel if it went this way? And especially if there is a worst case scenario, the best thing you can possibly do is like let yourself be very detailed in a visualization and walk yourself through it. Be with yourself for those feelings. and allow yourself to really be present with them and identify what they are. And then what you'll find is you've already moved through the worst case scenarios. No matter what happens, you've already lived through the worst possible thing that can happen. So what is there to lose?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if we're having a glitch or anything. It looks like everyone that's live is no longer on, but the recording's still going, so we'll just keep talking, and this will be available. I'm not sure if we're just experiencing like a weird glitch right now, or maybe you guys had boundaries and you're like, I need to go do something else right now, which is totally cool, because that's what we're here to empower you to do. So
totally.
I'm not sure what happened there, but we'll just keep going. So I know Beatrice had a really good point when we were kind of going through our game plan for this workshop earlier. She mentioned that, you know what, boundaries too like actually lie within a spectrum where you can be too loose with your boundaries, but you can also be too rigid with your boundaries. And I'd love to hear again what you had to say about that.
Yeah, let me think. Okay. So what I was thinking about is, and what I've noticed too, is like, you know, sometimes we can be really like quote unquote rigid to the point where we're like completely isolating ourselves and we're not connecting with people, because like, let's say that like your boundary is that you need alone time to like destimulate and decompress, but this is like happening every single day and like week after week. It's just you being in your room. And I don't know if like rigid's the right word, but it was the word that came up when we were talking. But like also sometimes like it's easy for us to tell ourselves like the story of like being with somebody is going to be like really draining, or I just don't have the energy to be with them right now. And so like we'll continue to like just kind of like isolate ourselves and like not connect with them. And that was kind of like that was really like my thoughts on it. It was just like, if it's getting to the point where you're like isolating yourself and you're not connecting with people because of like these boundaries that you have or these needs that you have, you know, it's then like I really think that like it would be really helpful and like beneficial to just kind of like stay open and try new thing, you know, try just like check in and like maybe go and hang out with your friend and see, and then check in with how you feel and be like, okay, was it just like a mental story that I was like telling myself, or like is this still like a boundary for me? But I have to go into the restroom. I will be right back.
Totally. And while she does that, I actually have something that I can share with you guys that is kind of like one of my own practices when it comes to this specifically. And what I do is I really make it known like what my needs even are. Like, how often do we sit down and just make a list? I need this, 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 this in my life. Not too often, probably. So I would really invite everyone to do that, especially when you're kind of running into that situation where you realize that maybe your boundaries are a little too rigid and they're just kind of like preventing you from having your needs met or having experiences that you really want to have. And what you can do is you can make a list of all the needs that you have, whether it's I need connection, I need nourishment, I need exercise, like whatever the thing is, right? So I want you to make that list. And once you have a list of what your needs are, what you can do is you can list for each one of those needs different ways that you actually feel are beneficial for you to go about meeting those needs. And a way to make this even easier is to go by how you feel. So what you can narrow your needs down to even further is what will it cause you to feel once you have that need
You
met.
are currently the
So
only
maybe
person in
like
this
once you
conference.
have that connection and that support, let's say that connection is one of your needs that you want, right? So let's say that once I have that need met, it's going to make me feel loved, safe, and supported. So then what you can do to make your list easier of how you can go about meeting that need is you can figure out, well, what things can I do right now that will cause me to feel loved, safe, and supported? Maybe like by me making, you know, a cup of tea will help me to feel safe. maybe by calling or texting one of my friends that'll cause me to feel loved. Like, what kind of things can you do to bring that feeling about in you right now? And then also make a list of those things that when it comes into question, all you have to do is pull out your list and be like, okay, well, I can choose to do this, 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 and this to meet my needs that are all things that feel beneficial for me, which is another way of saying these are my boundaries to getting those things. So that's a cool exercise that I do that hopefully will be helpful for you guys. And feel free to try that one out and let me know how it works for you.
I feel so much better now that I've gone pee. Like, I literally can't focus if I have to go pee. So sorry if I was like stuttering and like not spacey.
I get that one.
Yeah,
too.
I know. I was like, I cannot focus right now. But okay. So yeah. I also just wanted to say that if you, because a lot of, when it comes to like boundaries, a lot of us turn into chameleons. And like we will change what our likes and dislikes are when we are around certain people. And I just, self-awareness is like, practicing self-awareness is like my favorite thing. So like if you notice yourself doing that, and like with one person your favorite color is purple because their favorite color is purple, and then the next person your favorite color is red because their favorite color is red, that's characteristics of codependency. And with like boundaries, I think a lot of people tend to be codependent because we need other people to like us and to approve of us, and we base our self-worth on whether or not this person likes us or like approves of us. And if they don't, then we go down that track of like, oh, I'm a bad person, or I'm not good enough, or like whatever negative beliefs come up and like trauma comes up. But I also just wanted to point that out. Like codependency is just basically about like not having a sense of self. And codependency is being a chameleon and constantly like changing what your likes and dislikes are. And codependency is like basing your self-worth off of somebody else. So I just wanted to bring that dynamic up because I know that it's an issue that not really, I don't think codependency is like an issue, but like it's something that a lot of us who have issues with boundaries tend to be. So I just wanted to make you guys aware that there's a lot of great information online about codependency. So what is it? Yeah.
And just to kind of close up, I just want everyone to know that only you can define what your boundaries are. Mm-hmm. You're the only one that can know. Nobody can know what is right for you or what is wrong for you or what you should like versus what you shouldn't like. That's always going to be determined by you. And a boundary isn't something that anybody can argue you out of or convince you out of unless you genuinely want to do that or feel that way. And a lot of times it's hard because what basically not listening to your boundaries does is it causes you to like silently resent the other people around you, or is like passive aggressiveness, or you're suppressing emotions just to be able to have this connection which is just so faulty and standing on nothing because there's no healthy boundaries, or it just causes fractures or rifts in your relationships that after you let this go for so long you just can't repair anymore. So just to know that like you're right for having your boundaries, only you can know what your boundaries are. And if it feels good for you, I totally invite you to go through that exercise where you just pretend that you're an extraterrestrial alien coming to Earth for the first time and you're having all these experiences as if you've never had them before. And then from that point forward, you can really define like, what do I like about this? What do I dislike about this? And know that any of those things that you come up with are right and valid for you.
Yeah, and I also want to say like the most important thing for me in my expansion was attracting like safe people into my life that I could practice that were like, into self-help, or I'm pretty sure if you're on this call, you probably, of Teal Swan. That's kind of a boundary for me right now is like my friends. I want my friends to be into self-help because that makes me feel safe and good when people are conscious. So the most important thing is to attract friends in your life that are willing to let you practice boundaries with them and like hold them and like love them and nourish them to help you grow. Because once you start like practicing with one person and you kind of get your like toe in the water and you're like, oh, okay, it's not that cold, I don't see any sharks around, like I can maybe like go swim and play in the water more, like you're going to be able to express your boundaries more and more and more. And you know, I know it's like kind of scary to put yourself out there and have these conversations with people and be vulnerable and be like, hey, like this is what I want to do. I want to practice my boundaries because I have no boundaries. Like that's super fucking vulnerable. But there's going to be people out there who are going to be like, hell yeah, like I want you to have boundaries too. Like there literally is people out there. I know he's proof. I have other friends that are proof, you know, that like really want me to like have boundaries and to practice them. So like, and I know that you can have that too. Like it's not just limited to us, you know. So if just start the conversation. Like I know that's going to be like probably, you know, like one of the hardest things that you can like you're going to do, but it's going to be so amazing. And again, it's just like just find one person to like practice with. If you have more than that, like that's fucking awesome. Like I'm really happy for you.
And also know too, like if you're on this call, you're probably subscribed to the belief that you create your own reality and you can manifest experiences in your life. So know that this is no different. You can apply your manifestation techniques that you're already using into drawing people into your life that actually want you to have boundaries that you can practice them with. And to know that you can actually draw people, places, and things and experiences into your reality that will mirror these healthy boundaries back to you and validate them to you and make you feel good about having them, because you should. And it is something that you can actually live and actually feel good about having boundaries. That's like the beautiful part about a conscious friendship. And it's not something that just only we can have. Like we're no more special than you guys are. Like you can absolutely have this too. But know that there are many roads to the top of the mountain, and there are a lot of different techniques that you can use, whether it's the ones that we've listed here, whether it's law of attraction or just going into like shadows and doing inner child work. Therefore, you're not a match to those situations anymore. There's so many different things that you can do. But the number one thing that I think you guys can take away from this workshop is just to become conscious and awareness of what your boundaries are and when you're actually in the process of either feeling that they're being violated or they're being asserted. So just having that level of awareness and that level of consciousness, I think, is going to propel you in the right direction for you specifically, just by becoming aware and becoming conscious that it's even happening at all.
Yeah, Teal Swan always says that once you shed light on something unconscious, like that, just by virtue of doing that, is going to change your point of attraction. So I so agree with that notion, that just practicing like self-awareness. So like if in choosing the empowered choice of violating your boundaries, if you're going to violate your boundaries, because like seriously, like at least you're putting that energy out there of like, all right, I'm going to violate my fucking boundaries, but I'm choosing to do so. So like, here we go. Like, you know, at least you're putting that versus like, I don't want to fucking do this. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Yeah. And there's no shame in that. Like you said earlier, like we have so much compassion for that, because the only reason you're choosing to do anything is you think it's going to cause you to feel better. We want you to feel better. There's no shame in wanting to feel better. It's just now becoming conscious about the ways that you're choosing to obtain that.
Also, like, so did you have any like questions that you want to work out with us, Anthony, or anything that you want to talk about or bring up? Because we also wanted to like give some time and like offer you like one-on-one.
Yeah, we're just about here at the 90-minute mark already. So feel free, guys, to chime in. Yeah, we started a little bit late, really but obviously with the questions, it'll make us go to that point. So yeah, so it looks like Anthony, if you have any questions, we'd love to hear. If there's anything specific that you're unsure of how to approach, or even if you want to just use this opportunity to practice what it could be like, we're here for you. We want to be able to help you through it.
And if you can think of any scenarios, like if you just want to take the time to like tell us, like, you know, like manifest, like we would love to hold space for you. Like if you want to express like the kind of friendships you want to attract into your life, or the kind of relationships like related to like just like safety and like with boundaries, like we are happy to like hold space for that too. Like if you don't come up with anything.
Yeah, we so want that for you. You so deserve it. You're so worthy of having healthy boundaries just by virtue of existing. There's nothing that you have to do to become worthy or deserving of that. And we're still here to help create that and co-create it with you and lend our energy and our support. Okay, so it says, so I'm by myself at home and don't have a person who I can practice boundaries with. I want to manifest a person whom I can practice boundaries with. I so support you in that. And I'm going to be holding that space that you will. And I can also check in. Now, I know our other participant has vanished from the call, but I can check to see if that feels like something that you'd be open to, or I can maybe pair you guys up. And there are also some very fun Facebook groups where you can practice this stuff in as well. So like I know we've mentioned Teal Swan a few times. She has a huge Facebook group called Teal Tribe that you can join, where you can practice these things or find people even that want to practice them with you, because boundaries, I think, is something that we're all more or less like working towards or thinking about in that community. So I'm sure there'll be plentiful amounts of people there that want to practice that with you.
Yeah, but I mean, if you are clear, or like if you have an idea of like the kind of like what you want this like relationship, this person to feel like please share. Like we'd love it if you just took a minute and checked in and like, do you want them to feel really safe and like caring and compassionate? Like, you know, like what do you want it to feel like? And you can share with us, and we're holding space for you to manifest this person. And whether it's in person or online, like obviously, like ideally it would be really nice to have somebody like physically manifested. So if that's what you want, like that's cool too.
Absolutely. And then if there's any scenarios in your life where you're not sure how to assert a boundary, like we're here to answer those kind of questions as well. Like let's say like I have this situation with my mom, like what would you guys do, or something like that. We would love to help answer that. I think I'm going to take this quick opportunity to let myself have a restroom break.
Yeah, totally. I know.
I'm feeling it too, so I'll be right back.
And also, like, if nothing's coming up for you right now, or if you don't want to share, like, that is completely okay. This is just us, like, offering. And if you don't want to grab a bite, you know, from our offerings, like, that's okay too. He said, I'm just looking for basic conversations with people who I can practice boundaries with. Yeah, totally. How do you want these people to feel that you're practicing conversations with? Law of attraction and manifesting is really, really, really based on vibrations and feelings and emotions. So when you're wanting to attract, you know, people into your lives, like something that I do is I focus on how I want the relationship to feel like. Like, do I want them to feel safe and nice and just really like nurturing, or do I want them to be like, you know, like really like empowering and strong with their personality, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, you want to be like light and easy and fun.
Yeah,
it can be serious too.
It could be serious, like that's some people's jams.
You
like
know?
Seriousness is some people's jam, and that's cool. Yeah, exactly. So like, what would feel safe in this relationship that you want? I'm not sure about the other person. Yeah. So you want somebody that'll help you feel like you're worthy and that you're valuable and that you're good. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Oh my God.
And we're still here to mirror that you are already worthy. There's nothing that you need to do to become worthy. It's just about tapping into that and realizing it and really feeling it.
But if you honestly, like, if you can't receive that too, like, that's totally okay. But like, we just want you to know that we think you're amazing. And
just for being here, honestly, and being so committed to this. Like, not everybody goes and signs up for a workshop on boundaries. That really goes to show you like how much you care and how much you really want to have these experiences. And we're so here to lend our energy and our support and our love to that.
I'm so proud
meaningful.
of you.
we're proud of you for being here. And
Yeah.
for anybody else that's watching the replay, like, this is huge. You can really celebrate the fact that you made that commitment to yourself, and especially for you, Anthony, for being here at 6:30 a.m. your time. It's huge.
Yeah.
So I really want you to see like how worthy and how awesome you're already doing as well, and to be able to revel and celebrate in even just the little things like that.
Yeah, and I am just wanting to let you know that I'm just really, really, really excited that you are even expressing this. And I think that's a great, like, that's a giant leap, you know, to just by virtue of like you sharing with us like what you were looking for. Like, that's a huge leap, and that's just gonna continue. Like, we are holding space for that to manifest for you as well.
It is huge, and there are some people that will never even be able to admit that or share that with anybody through the course of their entire lives. And there are some people that will be living their lives in complete unconsciousness as to what boundaries even are. So just to let yourself see where you're at and the direction that you're moving is so beautiful and so brave. That we're here for you to support you, and that and we really want that for you. And it's possible.
You're amazing. Oh my God.
It's so possible. If we can do it, so can you.
Yeah, totally. It's not just limited to us.
Not at all.
Yeah, we are. Use us as proof that you can have somebody in your life that you can practice boundaries with.
Yeah, they can do it, so why can't I?
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're proof.
Yeah. And we didn't always know each other or have this, so it's something that just kind of showed up when we were ready for it.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, if there are any other questions, Anthony, we'd love to answer them for you. But I think we've pretty much got through all the material that we wanted to get through. So how does that feel? And it's up to you whether that's even something you want to respond to. You can take that in. There's no obligations ever. It's only what feels good for you or what feels right to share. That's great. No more questions. All right, beautiful. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here with us, and thank you to anybody else that's watching the replay right now. We're so grateful for you, and we're proud of you. What you're doing is so beautiful and so courageous.
And it is not easy at all.
It's not. It's really not, because you're living in a world where this isn't the norm. This isn't what you're taught or brought up with. So you're basically breaking out of the mold and becoming your true self, which you were basically invalidated out of as a child. So it's going to be uncomfortable at times. It's going to be hard. But like with anything else, it's a process, and it's like a muscle that you just strengthen over time. It gets easier and it gets stronger. And it's so possible, and we want that for you, and it's so able to be yours. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been our pleasure. This is something that we're super passionate about, so it's been so fun to be able to come together and do this. Thank you, guys are wonderful. Thank you so much. That means a lot. The replay, the recording, I think usually takes like 24 hours or so to process through this website. And then we'll send the link out to you guys. It'll be the same one that you used to log in, I believe, but I'll send it out just in case, that you guys know when it's up, in case you want to rewatch anything, because you can watch it as many times as you want to. So thanks again for joining us. Much love to you guys.
Bye.
Bye.